still works. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, sorry about that. After the last live with my friend, somehow my phone got stuck on a loop and I cannot back out of the window. The back out button doesn't work. Clearing the history hasn't fixed it, and I haven't been able to log out to log back in. So I've gotten a couple of emails off. I'm expecting, tech support to get a hold of me. Hopefully the beginning of this week, and we'll see if I can get my channel up and functional again the way it should be. If not, we'll figure it out. So anyway, how is everybody? I hope you can converse, chat, say hi, something. I don't know if you guys are able to see me, interact with me. Please let me know, because my channel's been having some difficulties. I need to know if I can actually broadcast or not. Telling me I'm running a ticker, but I don't know if anybody can comment. It's set so that you can. But, oh good. Yay, all right. So we do have today. Awesome. Thank goodness. Awesome. Good, good, good. All right, so let's get into the Stikini. All right, so Stikini is part of the Seminole legends, but there are other versions of the Stikini. Ravenmocker is another type of these creatures. I think the Ravenmocker is part of the Apache lore, and our tribe also had some lore about a critter like this, but ours was supposedly about a particular medicine man. So I figured I would at least cover the Stikini and maybe the Ravenmocker before I get into Big Sam. Big Sam is supposedly a medicine man who went rogue, went bad, and became an entity that now haunts the Pine Ridge Reservation. So I'm going to get into him after I've covered some of the other lore concerning potential medicine men that have gone rogue and dark and become shapeshifters. However, they may not have actually been shapeshifters. Maybe it's just that the lore is so ancient that it cannot be accurately described anymore. And I will get into that after I get a little bit into what a Stikini is according to the Seminole culture. So the story is that a Seminole medicine person, and this is an old lore, and I cannot remember the medicine person's name, and I don't think it can be remembered anymore because my grandmother didn't know the medicine person's name. At least I don't think she did. I'll have to think about it. But anyway, what she described was there had been a medicine man that had gone to fight a dark entity, supposedly, and that he lost to the entity, and that when he failed to protect his tribe, the entity took him over and made him perform a dark ritual that changed his ability to represent himself, turn him into a skinwalker, basically, allowing him to shift shape, that sort of thing. The modern lore doesn't get into that much detail. It just talks about any medicine man going to a dark way will become this creature. So let's get into what the Stikini looks like. The Stikini supposedly is a giant owl. That is a shapeshifter. It's similar to a skinwalker in that it's supposedly created because a medicine man has performed a dark ritual, something they were not supposed to, usually against either another tribal member or a family member, typically, and it causes a possession form that creates them into this thing that can shift from one shape to another. They can shift to a dog or coyote, for instance, with a skinwalker or other animals. But in the north and in the Seminole lands, it was more bird-oriented, and even around the Pueblo, their forms of shape-shifting birds were birds, not ground animals. So it might also have something to do with the locale. So in the lore, these things are about human size, and they have the bodies are about human size. The wingspan's 12 to 15 feet. They hunt only at night, and they supposedly gain their ability to shapeshift if they vomit up their organs every morning. So I know this is gross sounding, and I'm sorry for that. So the lore states that in the morning, the Stikini, in order to take human form again, has to, get rid of its internal organs, puke them up, and hide them. Then it can take human form. As long as the organs are hidden somewhere safe that cannot be found or touched, they will present themselves as a normal person walking through your culture during the day. At night, they go and retrieve those organs and they hunt you. So the old lore stated that if you can find the organs of a Stikini when it is in its human form and you destroy them, it will be destroyed not unlike a vampire. Sunlight, it will become to sunlight at that point, and the medicine man will die. So there's a vampiric element to this lore. Now, this is what gets interesting. If you take it out of the perspective of lore, because this is one that we can, because we have some fossil records, there are actually two types of ancient owls that could have fit this description. One of them being the Oleogotrix, excuse me, no R, which its range was in Colorado, and it was a 60-pound owl. Now, the weird thing is the most affected areas by the Stikini lore are in the Colorado regions, down into the southern Seminole regions. There is some ancient lore that went down into the Florida, but they supposedly died out in those regions. There was still lore of them in the Pine Ridge areas and up through the Pine Barrens. Up until about 150 years ago, there were still sightings. So, if you look at the fossil record, there was actually two different types of owls. Ancient owls were huge. A 60-pound owl that lived in this area that we have fossil record of. And we had another slightly smaller owl that lived in the Everglade regions and up in through the Pine Barrens at one point in time. Both of them died out at different times. The one in Colorado supposedly died out around 60 million years ago. The ones over in the Seminole lands and the Pine Barrens and in this Florida Everglades region persisted until about 10,000 years ago. That's when our fossil record becomes evidence of their disappearance. So there is a potential that the lore became mythical and related to medicine men going bad because the medicine man could no longer say how old the lore was. So it was his fault. He became the creature. That's just if you're going into the psychological end of it. Because unfortunately, Native American lore and culture, though we regained the right of personhood, religious freedom, the ability to be recognized as a human being and equal, in 1978 is when we finally got our rights to speak our own language and practice our own religion again. So there's a lot of stuff that could have been lost. There's a lot of lore that could have been just disregarded, turned into psychological metaphors because somebody else outside the culture is trying to make sense of stuff, which is something that has always been incredibly aggravating to me as a medicine person. I shouldn't be getting labeled for my religious practices. It's inappropriate. I don't label you because of your religious practices. I try to remain neutral. You have your opinion about things, I have my opinion about things. Anyhow, that's just my little bitch on that one. So, at least I can still do lives. I'm sorry I can't do anything else right now, because I can't get my phone to back out of that particular section of my site. And because the back button don't work in on the fly-in, I think it might be a coding issue. So I'm hoping they can fix it. Otherwise, I'm in a quandary. Do I start over again? I don't know yet. I'll know more this week once I get, in contact with a tech support proper instead of just kind of emailing back and forth. Yep. Oh, okay. Ravenmockers, Cherokee. Thank you. So, yeah, there are several tribes that have lore associated with, medicine people that transform into other things. Even up north, when you're dealing with the Amarok and the Seal people and the Otter people up there, some of those Loric accounts also have a suggestive nature in those tribes. So there's something to consider there. I'm just not sure exactly how to categorize it. I don't know if it's comes from trying to reiterate lost lore, trying to keep lore alive that's so old you can't remember how old it is, or if it has to do with the pollutants of the lore because of misconcepts of it, or putting it into a psychological category. That's something that I really aggravates me when you think about it, because we kept these lores alive about these ancient creatures because we knew we lived next to them at one point in time. And yes, it became a little more folkloric as these creatures died out and died off, but it doesn't make it any less real. I don't know why people from outside of culture always try to turn it into cultural fear. No, it was the fact that we were living next to things like direwolves and freaking dinosaurs. Stiff-legged bears of mastodon, for criminy sakes. Just we didn't have a word for elephant. So, to us it was just an unusual bear. When you consider that, when somebody is making a judgment as being a cultural fear-based ideology, it's ridiculous. There's fossil evidence of some of these things. Why are you trying to turn my belief and my understanding of my world into psychological metaphors? That's disrespectful, to be honest. It means it doesn't matter if I practice my old ways, my belief, or have an understanding of my cultural lore. I'm still just fucking crazy for thinking that way, and so is everybody else in my culture for doing so. No, that's just cultural discrimination. And I'm going to start calling it out, because I'm really sick of it. It's ridiculous that we live in the 20th century and everybody but a Native American has a right to say something about their own culture, about their own understanding of things. It's silly. Oklahoma, yeah. Yeah, because even up north, there are, you can go up into the Iliad areas, you can go up in the Adirondacks area, go up into the northern regions, you go over into any regions around the Greater Lakes, Nova Scotia, you're going to hear stories of all kinds of big birds. You go down into the Pueblo area, you're going to hear more stories about big birds. You go into the Seminole areas, you go into the Oklahomas, you go anywhere in areas where you've got ancient forests, you're going to get stories about ancient birds. Well, I know an area right here that's not 40 minutes away from my house where I can go take video footage of an ancient pileated woodpecker that's 2 foot tall. They're supposed to be extinct. The Audubon Society is aware of them. They are on a protected area. They're in a region where they're not going to be disturbed. Thank God, because there's no hunting allowed, no fires allowed there, no fireworks. You're not allowed to do anything in that area that could potentially catch that forest on fire. And the reason is because those pileated, massive, supposedly extinct, there's a small group of them still alive in those woods. It was something my mom and I helped document back in the 80s when we moved here. So if there are little pockets of archaic, supposed extinct creatures, even in really close regions to cities, then what is out in the middle of 60 billion acres, much of which does not have roads to it? You see, there are 60 billion acres in the United States that are not used. We have, what, over 124 billion or some fucking acres in, pardon me, in our United States. But over half of it's not even got roads to it. Don't tell me we know everything about that. Sort of like saying we know everything about the bottom of the ocean, or we know everything about the moon or space. We know a fraction, and we need to be more open-minded. We need to consider that we've been here on this planet for a very long time, and that ancient cultures and what we consider indigenous cultures probably have lore that go further back than we realize. Like a site archaeologically was just found here in Oregon that puts Native Americans here potentially 130,000 years before the land bridge. And it's got hammerstones next to it and a broken mammoth bone. Potential tool use and harvesting of bone marrow. But because it's not definitive, because we don't have another site yet to compare it to, although you'll have to remember, along the west coast, from Alaska down to Baja California and slightly below, almost to just north of Mexico City, that entire strip of land has never been underwater. In 300 million years, some portion of the west coast has always been above water. Given that, if you're going to find anything archaeologically fossilized from land-born creatures, it's going to be along that strip. The middle of the United States, you're going to find a lot of fossilized whales, other little ocean-oriented creatures, bigger ocean, plesiosaurs and those sorts of skeletal remains. And we do find that sort of thing in that inner ocean area. Part of what we have to think about when we're looking archaeologically is, are we looking for stuff that was under the water? Because we have now land exposed that can give us those kinds of details, those kinds of fossils. If we are looking for cultures, then we need to remain on land that was always above water, because you're not going to live under the ocean as an air-breathing creature. So we need to start parsing out where we search a little better. I know that Oregon has a lot of evidence in it. I know that Northern California has a lot of evidence in it too, because there's just too many petrified tracks in the bedrock along the west coast for there not to be other remains. And in fact, in one of the regions where I did my sweat before I went out to my turnout, both my mother and my grandmother claimed that on the other side of that stream there was an alluvial floodplain that had been inhabited repeatedly for over 20 or 30,000 years. As it would dry up, cultures would come live in it because it was very fertile, easy to game, hunt, collect what you need. As it flooded, they would retreat. When it dried out, they would come and occupy it again. That area has never even had the topsoil removed to dig under it. But every tribe in this area knew that area had been repeatedly occupied by multiple different tribes over multiple different generations. When we explained that to the government, they're like, oh, couldn't have been. It could have never happened that way. You don't know your own lore. You don't know your own history. You don't know what you're talking about. So they've never looked into that region. But on every side of that area are petrified trackways in bedrock. So it's a case of denial. They probably were afraid they're going to find something that's too old that destroys the land bridge theory, but the land bridge theory is already blown. With the tracks, 30,000-year-old tracks in White Sands, California, petrified, that blows the land bridge out of the way. Additionally, the Navajo, Hopi, and some of the northern tribal lore about the land bridge collapsing and them having oral record of it says that yes, some of us did migrate here, and they still have that lore preserved in their history, their oral traditions. Why aren't we paying attention to those histories? They're relevant. Stop following delusion. We need to start thinking more equitably about our information, more reasonably about our information. Be more inclusive. Because part of what I'm learning with my grandmother's lore, some native lore goes further back than we realize. Some of my grandmother's lore went way further back than I realized. As I'm digging through other native lore and trying to parse out what she was talking about, oh, I don't know how to break this stuff down and give it a logic timeline in some cases, because it's just so, I keep running things that are in fossil records for criminy sakes. So I think her lore may have been very ancient in some cases. Wow, that's a mind blower for me, because I'd never tried to parse out her lore before. I just accepted it verbatim and didn't try to compare it. But in trying to explain it to other people, I have to compare it, and now I'm realizing, god dang, my grandmother knew a lot. A lot more than I ever thought. Let me let me go back up here and see if there are any questions. If you got questions, please capitalize them so they're a little easier for me to pick out. And welcome everybody. I'm glad I can at least still do a live. And I can still post pictures. I just can't do shorts or videos or anything like that currently. Oh, cool. Central Florida. Synthetic nature, welcome. Yeah. Oh, and if you're thinking about how owls act, well, owls actually puke up what's called an owl pellet every day because there are certain things that owls' digestive systems can't handle. They can't digest bones. A vulture has strong enough stomach acid. In fact, there's one type of vulture that only eats bones. He doesn't eat anything else, just eats bones. So owls can't digest bones. They don't need them. Their body structure is such that it really doesn't require a lot to maintain it. So there's certain organs that their body does not digest. Bones, the hair off the creature, the pelts, the skins off of things, and some of the internal organs. Now, when you go out in the wild and you actually track an owl, you will find under their habitual sit tree where they get up in the morning and they go puke up the night before's dinner. And they'll come out this little gooey mess of gulach, usually wrapped in the pelt of whatever mouse it was consumed the night before. And when you pick through it, you'll figure out what's, not there or what is there. Now, if you are dealing with an ancient owl and not a spiritual entity, it may have the same behavior. Just because it's a bigger variety of something, the feeding behavior is probably going to remain the same. So it's still going to puke up an owl pellet in the morning. Now, if it's a big enough owl that can carry away your kids, you're going to think it's a dark entity. So if we were surviving just 10,000 years ago alongside of things like mammoths and giant owls, potentially, there would be a reason for us to be afraid of them and to be concerned about them, and a reason for later generations after they've completely died out, because these are probably stragglers, that were left over after the Younger Dryas event. Um, and there's evidence. There were straggler critters. The mastodon, for instance, it didn't die out until, what, 8,000 years ago now? It is the newest one we found. So, we've got stragglers who are still running around in ancient forests, and we're living next to them, and we have to survive next to them, and we can't move because we're going to be moving into somebody else's hunting territory. It will cause, cultural liberation. We're going to live next to these sorts of things, and we'll survive next to them. So if a creature like this eventually dies out over 1,000 or so years, you go 500 years and you haven't seen one, it becomes mythology at that point, and then you have to have an explanation for it. So it becomes the scapegoat's fault, the medicine man, for not knowing its origins anymore. That's a potential reason, if you're going to look at it as a psychological metaphor, as why it becomes dark magic, because they know about something that doesn't exist anymore. That's all. And that is common to human psychology. We do it all the time. We disregard something because we think it's a myth. And anything that's unfamiliar and too verbose, we automatically shut out. Why wouldn't we, as a following generations, as we forget stuff because the thing dies out, then you gotta either accept it or shift blame. That's just human psychology, though. Um, Phil, when it comes to native lore, I don't put any Christian value in it. In that, I don't look at it as demonic. I do not look at it as involving dark entities or alien presences or Satan. I look at native lore as being a historic record of the physical things that we interacted with in our world, and as they died out, they became loric entities, meaning we have a verbal record of them and a cultural memory of them, but they were physically things that have died out because they didn't have the habitat anymore to live in. I think that putting modern ideology on ancient history is inappropriate because it doesn't give it any value. It's trying to recategorize it as something that is digestible and acceptable, but that's not what history is about. Especially when you're talking about lore, it's probably referring to ancient creatures that they lived next to, not folkloric concepts of today. Yep, and the Stikini River. Well, there's other couple names for these too. My grandmother called it a Stigini with a G and no K in the sound. So there are several tribal names that all have a similar sound to them too, all from those northern regions. And even into the southern regions, there are slight variations due to language. Okay, question. Are succubi and incubus real? I'm assuming there are paintings of them. They've got to be real in European lore, but they're not relevant to Native American lore because we don't have them in our lore. We don't have entities like that in our lore. We have different cryptids that act vampiric. And then there's also, the misunderstanding of some of these shadow beings. For instance, the shadow beings in the Smokies. They're actually not black or gray or tall. The watchers there are little green guys. They're probably just either little giants or, some other small cryptid. They watch from the edge of the woods. They may not be a shape-shifting creature at all. They might just be another little cryptid of some sort that's known to lore. Yeah, I hope I can fix it too, Pamela. But, I've noticed with the bullshit that I've been going through with my vehicle, not finding anybody that wants to touch the front end of it to fixed my shock issue. And I don't know why, it's just cutting a couple of goddamn bolts and removing them and putting them in right instead of leaving them there rusted. I guess they're all freaked out about that. And then having this issue with my website, having the issue with my phone, like, it's got a bug on it. It keeps filling up with my personal information. I can't dump the, I can't clear my phone. It makes me wonder what avenue I need to be on. Because if I keep getting blockaded, nature's trying to tell me something's going on here and I need to do something different. I just don't know what yet. Oh, okay. Sorry, Phil. But no, there's no lore in Native American culture about succubi or incubus. Eric, is it known what the entity that changed the medicine man is? Is the entity interdimensional? It's often considered an unrested ghost. Normally, within native lore, it's usually a vengeful ghost. It's part of the reason why most tribal cultures, you don't, once a person passes away, you don't say their name out loud anymore. And the reason, you say my sister, my uncle, my grandfather. You don't say their name. Because saying their name pulls them away from their rest. You're supposed to go to the happy hunting grounds. And if your living relatives keep mourning you and keep calling your name, it turns you into an unrested, vengeful spirit because you want to go on to the happy hunting land. You don't want to be stuck here. When you get stuck here because your relatives call your name too much, keep you in their minds too much, you become vengeful and you'll go after the medicine man. That's supposedly the way this come about. So it's part of our traditions. When a person dies, you cut your hair. That way you cut away everything that was negative in the life with that person. You cut away all the bad done between the two of you. It's a form of forgiveness. You get rid of it. You're starting new without the person in your life. Your hair grows new. You burn that hair. That's so that those memories go with the person. You don't speak their name again, so you don't unrest them and bring them back. You give them the respect they are due. You let them go on. You accept that your mourning is because you will no longer have them in your life next to you. It's a process. You have to let them go. And all that you miss is the fact that you cannot interact with them. So when you pray to your ancestors, you bring back their memory. You don't talk their name. If they come to you in a dream, you thank them. If they come to you in a vision, thank them. Because they took time out of eternity to come see you for a reason. But if you call on them, it changes the atmosphere. So you always leave tobacco. You smoke with sage to keep your physical being healthy, so that you can have a healthy relationship with your ancestors, and an appropriately balanced one. Yeah, part of the reason why that area is so strict is because they've been trying to encourage that little group of affiliated, because there aren't very many of them. It's only a couple of family groups. And I do know where they are, and no, I don't go bother their nesting area. Every once in a while, I do know where one of the crossover foraging lines is so I can sit there and watch them forage. But the reason why that particular area is under such heavy protection is to assure that they never get wiped out, and that that little forest remains as stable as it can for them. And I hope they make it. They haven't had a lot of extra numbers in the years that I've known, but at least they're still there. I got to see one last year. I didn't have a chance to get a film of it because it went by so quick. Okay, I see. Okay, synthetic nature. I see so many cryptid channels on YouTube. Falsely referred to pale crawlers as. Yeah, I know, skinwalkers. Two different creatures. And it drives me crazy. I try to educate them. Yep. And that's another thing I'm having a huge. Yeah, I'm trying to present my grandmother's lore. I'm trying to give it back. And it gets aggravating when that's not respected. And it makes me wonder if it's worth it, which I don't like wondering about. Yep, saw a direwolf, northeast Pennsylvania. Online search found other sightings in PA as well. Oh yeah, direwolves were known from the west coast all the way. God, direwolves were all over the United States, along with saber-toothed tigers at one point in time. The weird thing is the La Brea Tar Pits has got over 2,000 skeletons of direwolves and over 4,000 skeletons of Smilodon, saber-toothed tigers. And out of both of those groups, they've got a certain number that have signs of domestication, both in the direwolf and in the saber-toothed tiger. So who was here 10,000, 12,000, 20,000 years ago domesticating those things? And were they using them to hunt? What were they hunting? The stiff-legged bear? Because one of the sites that was recently found here in Oregon is a completely preserved structure made out of, or I think it was in, might have been somewhere else, but mastodon bones, an entire home made out of mastodon bones. So were Neanderthals domesticating direwolves? The other is some of these stories about the Shunkawork and Shunka-Ook. They might not all be referring to dogs that walk upright. The Shunkaworkin is a dog that walks on all fours. It's never known to walk upright. So is it talking about a hyena? Is it talking about a direwolf? Is direwolf got some cousins still around? Because there are lots of sightings back east and in the Midwest of some very bizarre looking dogs, that are too big. There's even film footage of some dogs that shouldn't be there. And the characteristic attacking of domestic dogs. Shunkaworkin carries off dogs. Shunka-Ook laughs like monkey. Well, we know hyenas laugh like a monkey. Spotted hyenas will make a funny sound that sounds like a monkey laughing. So part of it is, we've got some of these things potentially in our fossil record. We've got potential cousins of some of these critters still running around that aren't in our fossil record that we've found yet, but maybe it's just because we're not looking in the right places. And we've got a lot of lore that supports ancient creatures still existing in some regions. And we have a lot of lore suggesting that some of those things have died out. And some of them don't fit into any explanation yet. The upright walking dogman, other than Egyptian lore, some lore out of India, Hawaii. Hawaii has lore about a pair of dogman brothers. It's the reason why humans are in existence on the Hawaiian Islands. A pair of dogman brothers. That all goes back to some sort of ancient shared mythology when you start thinking about it. China has stories about the first two provinces were both occupied by dogmen. So we've got a lot of repeat ancient indigenous lore stories. Australia, there are stories about walking dogmen, upright walking dogmen. So we've got a lot of indigenous cultures from around the world that share really similar stories. There has to be a reason for it. If we haven't had contact with each other, then we're all seeing the same critter, and we're all telling stories about creatures that look very similar in different cultures. To me, that's not suggesting that it's folklore in any regard. It's suggesting that those stories are relevant to something that's no longer here, that's probably died out. Okay. Hollis, he dated a set of human footprints in ancient lake bed found in Spain 8 years ago, dating humans 127 million years back. Correct. And there's bedrock here in this valley, and now about an hour away from here, that has dogman tracks, human tracks, giants tracks, animal tracks, Bigfoot tracks, petrified in 300 million year old bedrock. So how long have we been here? I think we're at a point technologically where we can figure that out. Genomically, we're beginning to understand that there are a lot of shadow cousin species and things that have separated from us linearly much further back in history than we realized. Like what? We've got now 5 different categories of Neanderthals. One of them is a shadow species within our DNA that we don't even have bones for yet. Florensis, we found another Florensis. Denosovans, we've got 2 more of those in shadow DNA that we don't even have bones for. So how many other cousins do we have that we haven't even found yet? Because not everybody's gotten their DNA tested. And then some of this DNA that we can't categorize, like there's a lot in the Native American DNA. There's a whole, like 30% of our DNA cannot be identified or pinned into any group. It just doesn't belong to anything else. So what does it belong to? Obviously something we don't have an identification yet genetically. I wish they would start cross-referencing some of that unknown sequenced, already sequenced Native American DNA. Put it up against cryptids. Put it up against cryptid DNA. Because I can almost guarantee you're going to find some matches. Sounds weird, and I know that's going to be alarming to other people. But if we could crossbreed with Florensis, Denosovans, and Neanderthals, Homo erectus, that's 5 different other things we could breed with. What could they breed with? It's not unreasonable to think that our family tree is a much larger bush of family groupings than we realize. A lot of this we can't find male references to the DNA. It's probably because we were an isolated population that may have died out. Maybe incompatibility genetically is the reason why some of these bottlenecks occurred. Maybe we got down to such a number that we just couldn't breed with each other because there weren't enough survivors from whatever was left after whatever event happened. Some of it, we have to think that we live in a great big planet that is subject to extraterrestrial interventions. And I don't mean aliens and spaceships. I mean planetary collisions, asteroid collisions, shifts in our magnetics, uh, pulls on us as we go through different sectors of our space. There's stuff that we run into. And, you can say it's cataloged out, but yeah, it would be if we continually circumvent our Milky Way. We're going to run into the same stuff in each region that we pass through. We're going to run through the same asteroid belt more than once, for instance. We're going to have our close call with some unknown planetoid in one area because we've already been there and already almost missed it once before because we traverse the same path. So it stands to reason that some of this is going to be cyclic. And any culture that's been here long enough to go around the Milky Way once is going to have a record of it. Any culture that's been here long enough to go around it twice is going to have a record of it. And we're just starting our third circumvention of that. And ancient records like the Maya calendar and the Vedic texts of India talk about that. Even the Mongolian texts and the Tibetan texts talk about that. There are cultures that have records of us traversing our own Milky Way. That takes 200 billion years. So we've only been through our Milky Way twice. We're getting ready to go through it again. So yeah, if we've been here since the beginning, then it would stand to reason we would have some records of it, which is kind of pointing to that we've been here forever. That opens up a whole new can of worms that nobody wants to think about. Because that blows a lot of our presumptions out of the water in so many ways. Okay, Phil, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What is all the... That is all I ask. If there is a connection to ascertain if non-native experience is related to these. Shocks are, are easy to change usually. Well, I would say the European lore, though it became more folkloric, probably talked about real things. Real creatures, real entities, real cryptids that they arrived around as cultures. It was just how far back does their lore go? European lore still talks about the hairy man, for instance. We call it Bigfoot, they call it hairy man. It's called Yahweh in Australia, and it's called Yeren in China. They may not be all talking about the same cryptid. There might be different tribes of cryptids, because it might just be different species, but they all still talk about them, meaning that these things are still alive next to them. It means not everything died out in the last, collisions. Anything that can adapt and overcome, has an omnivorous diet, can shift its diet, is more likely to survive in an environment that becomes incredibly hostile. After the Younger Dryas, we ended up with 3 foot of ash from the asteroids exploding and dropping carbon calcinate all over the United States. There's a 3 foot layer of this stuff that goes from the west coast to the east coast and up through Nova Scotia and over into parts of Great Britain. If the asteroid splashed down in the Pacific or blew up over the Pacific, we have a trackable debris pattern, and it has been charted. Anything that could have survived that mess did. And it had to have been because either they were carnivorous enough to eat each other, or omnivorous enough to eat whatever survived. Because your herbivores are going to die out. They're going to die out in short order because they don't have anything to graze on. Your plants are going to die out. Your trees are going to thin out because they're covered in gook. Until rains occur, Your trees will survive more likely than your grasses. Because anything that's under 3 foot of calcium carbonate, and that stuff is so fine it's going to pollute your lungs. You're gonna get cement in your lungs from breathing it. If you go underground, you'd have a greater chance of surviving. If you come up to the surface, forage, go underground. So anything that was a cave dweller is going to survive. Anything that lived in the ocean has a better chance of surviving. Anything that could get out of the, or survive in what was left of the atmosphere could. But anything that couldn't is going to die out, in short order. And that's something we don't think about when we consider our own planetary history. What happened each time a die out occurred? Was it because there was an asteroid event? Was it because rapid polar ice melting and it completely changed our oceans? Because that also happened once. We had the beginning of the coniferous period. The ice that we had melted and it screwed up a lot of stuff. Our planet became very warm. We had an average, 105-degree days during that 2 million year cycle. So that you have to look at the atmosphere of the environment. Each timeline of history has been different. Sometimes we've been more ice covered, sometimes we've been more tropic. We also have to consider what life was like before we had a tilt to our planet, before we had seasons. Because even in modern lore, there are times like the Grecian story of Persephone. There is no record of winter or summer before the capture of Persephone. Kore went into mourning and caused the first snow to fall with her tears. So that would logically mean that before that time, our planet didn't wobble and didn't have seasons. So how far back in history does that lore come from? Because it can't be recent. Our wobble in our planet's been here far longer than 7,000 years ago. So that lore has to be far older. Okay, Phil, if you can't get back, yard guy, but I bet you could change your own shocks, oil them up to loosen bolts. Yeah, I've been thinking about whether or not I could bag the bolts in miracle oil long enough to get the things to unrust so I could seat them correctly. I gotta get up because it's the top bolt. It's like the guy had the shocks changed. They didn't screw in the top bolts completely. They went to lunch, forgot that they hadn't secured the bolts correctly, told the guy to take his vehicle home, and they rusted with the bolts, with an inch gap. So I'd have to somehow encapsulate that whole area to get them to unrust so I could screw the bolts in. Just get up there and zip them off and get them free and put new bolts in. I don't know why that's so freaking difficult. Phil, I wanted to cut out of his will. Oh, gotcha. Personal stuff. Okay, another Phil. Thank you, Isa, for your open dialogue and more. Cryptids, entities, beings. I have seen a lot and thought I was losing my mind. Oh, good. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure a lot of people's experiences are not mental disorders. I think, we've got a lot more things living around us than anybody wants to talk about. You can't find a footprint or take a picture of something that isn't really there, for instance. Just saying, I could track my dog. I could take a picture of her. I could take a picture of her tracks. So that means she's a physical thing. That would suggest that anything else you can take a picture of and take a picture of track of has to be a physical thing. We're taking it for granted too much that they're from somewhere else. No, they're just really good at hiding. I mean, look at some of the people that have been hidden within our own cultures and stayed hidden for 30, 40, 50 years. Out in the jungle. Nobody knew they were there. I mean, there were two more people found in the jungle after Vietnam. Father and son. His son doesn't even know what women look like because dad never told him what girls were. They were accidentally discovered because of hikers in the area. They lived in the jungle since the 70s. So if a man with his kid, a crying 6-month-old baby, can go get lost in the woods, survive for 50 years alone, what else can go missing and hide in the woods and stay securely hidden from us for generations? You know, we're putting more mystery in the mix than I think needs to be there. I think we just need to realize there's still some physical creatures out there that nobody's talking about, but are still there. They might be an incredibly small number. They're probably leftover things that have survived from ancient times. They're probably all historic creatures of some sort. Likely they're in very, very small, close to extinction populations in most cases. Now all we need to do is document them, truthfully document them. Because the more supposition and theory we put on them, the less likely we're going to be looked at in a respectable manner as people trying to communicate anything about them. You know, we'll be looked at and laughed at, and the subject will be ha-ha'd at, when it actually warrants looking into, because that means that we have a much richer wildlife out there than we know. I mean, for criminy's sakes, about 20 years ago now, my brother, because over in Central Oregon, it's legal to pot shot, get rid of coyotes because they're considered a menace. And you do have to report them. You got to call the game warden when you pot shot one. He took out what he thought was a coyote. But when he went to look at it, it was not the right size. It was way too freaking big. Like it was the size of a wolf. So he calls the game warden, and he takes the game warden to it because he's like, what the hell did I just shoot? Game warden's like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's a crossbreed. It's a half wolf, half coyote. Comes out as a dire coyote. Bigger, like it's sort of like looking at the giant genetics of Ligrin versus a tigrin. There's a genetic factor within the tiger that keeps the offspring small. There is no such thing in the lion. So if the male lion mates with the female tiger, you get a ligrin that's twice the size of either of the parents. But if it's the other way around and the tiger mates with the lioness, you get a average or smaller sized creature because the gene is there that keeps the size in check. Taking just that genetic example into account, any ancient dog out there that's still able to crossbreed with any other dog might throw something larger than itself or smaller, depending on if there's a genetic factor for giantism in the father. Now apply that to every mammal. Maybe that's where giants come from, for instance. Maybe it's just that the female doesn't have a counter to the genetics. Because you can do that with house cats too. You can take a regular sized house cat, inseminate it with a larger cat's semen. The baby will be born normal size, but will grow to a size larger than the house cat mama. So there's a genetic potential there It's repeatable in different mammals. That might be a factor that I don't think we're even looking at, because we probably didn't even realize it was a potential until the accidental crossbreeding in San Jose Zoo 25 years ago or 30 years ago now. You know, some lion jumped a fence, tiger jumped a fence, went, hey baby, had a new kind of kitten. Now, out in the wild, if you get reduced numbers of multiple different kinds of creatures and it can't find a species of its own type to mate with, it might mate with whatever happens to be left around. If the mating works and comes out viable, you might have a new species. It's going to look different because it comes from two different parents. And a lot of the lore um, that's preserved internationally, indigenously, even about Bigfoot, suggests two different parental types that through a third different kind of creature. The Ligrin and Tigrans are examples of that. Now just apply that to ancient humanoids. So they're not demons, they're not extraterrestrial. That's just how life goes on when the environment has drastically changed what survives. It's an avenue for survival. Oh, and then spiderite. You know, that's one lore cycle. You can get into just about any lore cycle and you've got cyclic creations. You get into the Hopi lore and the Navajo lore, and we're in the 6th and 7th generation of the planet being reformed. You get into European occultic lore, and we're in like the 10th or 11th cycle of being recreated. That's also suggestive of mass destructions and rebuilding after mass destructions. And that could be cyclic, that could be related to asteroid strikes. It could be related to where our planet is within our astronomical events, traveling through our Milky Way, traversing our own solar system, because we do traverse our solar system. Um, I would do more trades, except right now I can't film and post. I can only do lives, and I can only post pictures to my posts section. So if I can't get it fixed this week, I have to figure out if I'm going to continue, if I'm going to build a new channel, use a different phone, try to maybe manage see if I can get my laptop to work. Maybe I can manage this channel through my laptop. So I'll see if it's a site issue with YouTube, and if it's not, that my site's stuck in a loop. I might be able to manage it through my laptop if I can get my laptop to work up here. Or I'm gonna maybe have to start over. I don't know yet. I'll wait and see this week. I'll keep you guys posted. I'm gonna try to do at least one live a week, every Sunday, until I get this resolved. I'll post in the meantime, you know, I'll update you during the week if I can figure out what's going on. And if I manage to get my ability to post videos back, I'll just post the video, let you know it's working again. I got a lot of soul searching and thinking to do about this and what I want to try to do. I have half a mind to start over and do it right and get everything put in correctly and all my boxes checked, as it were, and just monetize it and charge y'all a buck to be a member so I can get away from all the negative assholes. Sorry. But a part of me is really at that level of I'm fed up. I'm fed up with the turkeys. Well, and there's always some sort of disaster that happens internationally in some part of the world that drastically changes a culture regionally. So flooding occurs in different locations in different regions at different times, and it can be due to oceans, it can be due to upheavals, it can be due to volcanics, it can be due to changes in a floodplain, and it can completely wipe out a region overnight. And that will, if in ancient times when you didn't have the ability to move mass, you didn't have buses, you don't have trains, you don't have planes, you can't get out of an area. It means you're not going to move. Once a flood recedes, you're going to rebuild. Whoever has survived will rebuild. That's something else we don't take into account. We don't view ancient history in the perspective of you're not going anywhere because there is no mass transit. You're not going to communicate to anybody because there are no phones. You're not going to get any relief efforts because there's no way to call for help. We have become so domesticated and so reliant upon living in a house and having the ability to call our family. We don't think in those terms anymore. We don't think about what it meant to survive 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 1,000,000 years ago. It's not in our modern concept. So when we look at fossils, we don't picture the environment the fossil came from. We're given a number, the date, the year, 40 million years ago. Okay, well, what did the planet look like 40 million years ago? The map doesn't look the same. The land lay isn't the same. The ecology is not the same. Nothing's the same as it is now. So when we're educated, we're not given a relevant timeline usually. And, unless we're really young and we're in grade school and, your teacher's giving you an overall cultural understanding of the flora and the fauna. But as adults, we're presumed to know that. So when I talk about the Ordovician period, what comes to mind? Does anything come to mind? What does the Ordovician period look like? What lived in it during that time? You don't have a clear picture. How can we talk about the fossils if you don't have a clear picture of what the overall land lay was? Well, we can't. So that leaves it up to me to describe to you what the Ordovician period was like. Well, it had 24% more carbon dioxide in the air than now. It had less oxygen, only about 3%. The oceans were warmer, averaged 94 degrees in the ocean. It's also when all life sprang to existence, when little tiny things became great big things. We didn't even have grass on what little land was out there. It's all up to the person describing it to fill you in on the circumstance. Because, if I say amanita or ammonite, am I talking about a mushroom or am I talking about an ancient conical shell? And what environment do they live in? So we culturally don't keep a lot of information in our brains about the past. And because we don't keep a lot of information in our brains about archaic history, it's not relevant in the discussion, which it needs to be relevant in the discussion, because how else can you understand it? Oh, cool, Spider. Let me try to resolve this issue with my website. Uh, then let's see about trying to do an interview. I'm gonna see if I can't get this resolved on my phones in this week, then I'm gonna try to use my laptop, see if I can manage my site through my laptop. If I can manage to do that, maybe I can do more interviews, because hopefully it will function better than my phone seems to do with this site. And I do have another phone waiting in the wings to be activated. And no, I'm not going to bother to transfer this one's card just in case this thing has a virus on it. I don't want to put that in my new phone. I'll just restart. But if I can, either fix this issue here, I'll just transfer to my new phone. If I can't, then I'll try to do it through my laptop. And if that doesn't work, then I'll just start a new phone and make a new site. But it might take me a minute or two. Okay. Spider there probably had much oxygen in it for us too. Well, that's something else that was discovered, like, what was it, 1992, I think it was? We had the Oregon Rift open up. It's a volcanic fissure. It's about 2 miles off the coast of Oregon. So it's got 1,500 degree heated water pouring out of the vents with a really high 15 or 20,000 particles sulfide, sulfuride water coming out of the vents. Here's the wild thing. The life forms in the area didn't die. Tube worms that are normally 6 inches tall now grow along that rift 6 feet tall. Oysters that are normally, 6, 8 inches long. You get a real good oyster if you got an 8-inch, 9-inch long oyster. The oysters near the rift are 40 pounds. 40. Meaning they're the length of my forearm or longer, 18 inches, 20 inches. So modern fauna of the area, sea life of the area, corals, mussels, tubulars, they didn't die. They adapted overnight. They're the same creature. They've genetically studied them. They just immediately adapted to the new environment. So how did that occur? That means that there was enough genetic stress in that area that some sort of gene from our ancient past was able to initiate in the smaller life form. So any eggs in those areas, any babies in those areas survived by genetic adaptation, kicking back into a previous life form that was supposedly extinct. So how does extinction really work again? Because if you go take a look at the Oregon Rift, and there's plenty of underground footage, or not underground, underwater footage. Newport Bay area, their marine laboratory there researches the rift. They've got a lot of stuff up online about it. So how does it happen that those things got giant overnight, didn't die out in that atmosphere, and continue to thrive? That means we don't understand genetically what we are talking about when we talk about extinction. It also means we don't genetically understand our own triggers and how life may potentially be able to survive in extreme environmental changes. When that fissure opened up, everything that was a modern life form should have died and not survived. There should be a great big swath there. They're getting boiled alive, not able to flourish, but that's not what happened. That's not what is occurring. Everything is doing fine there. Everything's growing to gigantic size. And we're seeing things that are modern tube worms, modern corals, modern oysters, looking like they're something that should be alive a billion years ago. It's the environment that they are in that is giving them back their giant size. And currently, science can't explain that. But that's really, to me, that's really entertaining. And it's very interesting. Because that means that we don't understand jack all about what it means to be a living thing on this planet. Because everything we understand about a living, creature, they shouldn't be living in that environment right now and flourishing. There's no scientific reason for them to do so, from what we understand currently. So, what other things have we gotten wrong? What other things do we think we have figured out and we may not have figured out? Because that rift opening up and those life forms being able to adapt that way, that should not be occurring according to what we understand scientifically today. There's a lot of stuff actually scientifically today that we think we understand, but we can't explain. So I don't think we understand stuff as much as we think. I think we're working a lot on theory. On the property, I found small stored organs, small critters, vast gas. The man who owned the place had a tiny collection. Huh. Super tinker. Do you have a fossil bed that you've got access to? Because we got a fossil bed right here. See, this part of the valley at one point in time was under 25 feet of water. The Willamette Valley at one point in time was under, it was a shallow sea. So we've got, what was it, sea urchin spines. We've got manta ray spines. I think what else, there are a couple other things that are petrified. Cuttlefish shell. See, cuttlefishes actually have an internal bone. That's another thing that you can find petrified in this area is a little cuttlefish bone. And we didn't realize that they were on the surface until a fire break road was cut around the backside of one of the universities here on property that's privately owned by the university. They cut a fire break line, and in that fire break line, they found a whole ton of fossils. So it gave that university a chance to take their archaeological students out and have them dig in topsoil for really ancient petrified stuff. And you can walk that back fire break road, still pick cuttle bones up and sea urchin spines and stuff like that, and even some shell fragments at this point. There's all kinds of stuff just laying on the surface. You scrape the surface and you find all kinds of stuff, and it's so thick with fossils. It's like somebody laid them down as like they brought in a truck full of fossils, like gravel, and just laid it on the roadway. It's so weird. It's gravelled with fossils, put it that way. All right, guys. So yeah, I'll continue to do a weekly on these different kinds of critters, different kinds of cryptids, give my thoughts on the matters. I'm thinking that some native lore, though, is far, far older than even tribal people understand. And I think my grandmother's lore is very suggestive of some of that. And I'll post updates in my post sections. And I'm probably going to still try to do what I can for getting pictures. And when I get something clear, I'll just put it up. Uh, so hang on for the next couple of weeks till I get stuff sorted out. If I can get this channel completely active again and functioning correctly. The other is I've got to talk to him about the fact that I'm not a child and I don't need to talk to my parents to fix my channel. That was the other issue with this channel. Somehow it's become a child's channel, though it was registered to me as an adult, so I don't know what the heck is going on with that. I won't. Pretty sure they can fix that, though, from their side. So maybe I can get back in and be able to use this channel. If not, then I'll have to rebuild. I'll keep you posted on that, though, as much as I can through this channel. Unless something goes wrong and I can't post this channel. If I go dang absolutely silent, start looking for my next channel, because I'll use the same name with just 2 after it, so it'll be Northwest Native Tracker 2. Just in case I can't get this thing functional again, watch for me, I'll be back. Yikes. It just sucks. But then, like I said, other people have been having problems too. Dee's Dark Adventures, her channel went down. Forest Friends, her channel went down. So it's not uncommon. It's not an uncommon problem. It's just frustrating. Yeah. Oh well. Things happen for a reason. Just gotta figure out why. And I just have a lot to do this summer. I have to move all my stuff again out of my storage unit. I've been trying to downsize property, sell stuff off that my family doesn't want. God. And try to make my life easier. So part of my summer is going to have to be dealing with some personal stuff. That, and I need to start visiting my brother more. Because he's 80, yeah, 81 this year. So his years are getting lesser and lesser, and if I'm going to have any time with him, I better go spend it now. So part of the summer has got to be going over and visiting my brother. But that's okay. It gives me an avenue over there to do some more recording if I can get if I can get this issue with my channel dealt with, it'll give me a chance to do some other recordings. Because that's near where, his place is near where my turnout was done. So there's lots of cryptids over there to film and lots to talk about over there. Yeah, family, personally in my mind, family comes first. Because you only have them once in your life, And me being the youngest in my family, I'll be the last one left. It'll just be myself and my niece and my nephew, because we're all the same age. I'm only a few months older than them, or maybe a year or so older than them. Imagine my niece and nephew being just a few months apart from me. I was born very late in life to my parents, so it makes things different for me. I have a extra knowledge because my grandparents were born in the late 1800s. My parents were born before World War II. My siblings were born after World War II, and then here I come along at the end of everything. So I've got the luxury of having gotten to speak to people who were born before the turn of the century. My native grandmother was born in 1897. The things that she saw. My mom, born in 1924, she lived through the Roaring Twenties. My grandmother rode a motorcycle during the Roaring Twenties. My mom got to see the gangland wars in California, Pretty Boy Floyd and all that stuff, and then went to war. Yeah, they saw so much more life than we ever saw. Amazing. I'm so glad I got to hear from them their life experiences, and the things that they grew up around, and things that they did. I mean, my father started his first trap line when he was 10 years old. He managed a 50-mile long trap line when he was 10. You can't do that these days. No child would be allowed to do that these days. He was born in 1917. My grandmother ran her own business when she was 11. She delivered milk to everybody in the neighborhood. No child would be allowed to do that now, or have those experiences now. That would never happen. Our culture's changed. Valentine, my roommate, had relations she talked to that were born in the century before last. Yep, knowledge is precious. Yes. I mean, my grandmother talked about how when they moved from Bakersfield to the coast, it was horrible because they went from 7 cents a gallon for gasoline to 10 cents a gallon for gasoline on the coast. Could you imagine 10 cents a gallon for gasoline? My mom told me about renting her first apartment before World War II. It was 75 cents a month. The house still stands. I got to see her first apartment. Of course, when I saw it, they were renting it for $175 a month. That was back in the 70s. That was way expensive then, because she had a widow walk around her room. She had a loft room with a widow walk. We're never going to see a life like that again. Not unless we make it happen. But we're going to have to get rid of a lot of corruption to do that. But just the things that they experience, the affordability of life, the freedom, the connectedness to what they understood about the world. There's no child that's connected enough to the world right now to go out and run 50-mile trap line and survive. They aren't going to know how to hunt and prepare their own dinner. They aren't going to know how to row a boat safely, or to check their trap line and get home safely. It's just not within their ability. We're too domesticated. And that's what I mean about domestication. We are so domesticated, we don't know how to survive. We don't know how to think, and we don't know how to relate to the world. It's not there for us, unfortunately. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for letting me talk your ears off for an hour and a half. Like I said, hopefully this week, I'm hoping tomorrow I'll get an email. By Wednesday, if I haven't gotten an email, I'll try to call somebody at YouTube, see if I can get some direct assistance from a tech. I hope. If not, I'll try some other avenues to get the channel up on my own, and if that doesn't work, then I'll just probably start over. No, my GoFundMe is still not current, but I do have the password for that one. I can go into that one through other means. I just have to go in and do it. But right now I've got to about my truck so I can update my GoFundMe so it will be active again. So I'm kind of all the way around. It seems like the world is saying, halt for a second. I don't know why. But usually that means something else has to occur. And I usually take it to heart when the world starts getting in your way, then there's something that needs to be adjusted. I just got to figure out what. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you and bless you too. Yeah, blocking can be protection. I was just, that's what I'm beginning to wonder too. Because I've noticed that for some reason the last couple of months, my channel has gotten some really unpleasant individuals commenting. Now, I try to remove those sorts of things when they occur because I don't think that you need to be exposed to negativity while you're trying to learn something, for one. Me, I don't want to deal with the negativity because it's inappropriate, it's stupid. So I just either hide or block those people. But there's been a real severe uptick in really, really verbally abusive comments. So maybe it's time for me to take a break, back off for a minute. So maybe there is something blockading me for my own protection. And that is something that has crossed my mind. Thank you for also seeing that possibility. Yeah, exactly. Well, and if I do start another channel, if this one doesn't pan out to continue to work, I might back off on a lot of the field stuff, and I might focus more on lore for a while and background education and, thoughts on whether or not some of these things might be remnant populations survived past a particular event like the Younger Dryas. I mean, maybe give it a little more fossil, physiological, historic perspective. Because it just seems that some people have a real problem with Native Americans speaking about our religion, our beliefs, and our lore. And that's a little disappointing. Yep. But then, that's something my grandmother warned. She said, well, just because it's legal for you to practice your ways and to believe and speak your language again doesn't mean that people aren't going to still hate you for it. She might not have been wrong about that. Oh, yeah, definitely. We've been working on the books. In fact, I just spoke with my co-writer a couple days ago. I'm going to be sending him a whole bunch of pictures. I just offloaded a whole bunch of stuff to send his way so that he's got stuff for the book. And yeah, we're talking about maybe doing more than one. And I need to get my computer back here so I can continue to work on them too, because I got a couple of books in the works. Oh my God, it's a lot. Oh, good. Yeah, maybe it might also be less, I hate to say it, I think that some of the way I go about things is a little challenging to other researchers. And I don't think they like being challenged, but that's okay. If I start focusing more on the lore, maybe they will feel less intruded upon. I don't like stepping on anybody's toes. That's not why I'm here. I'm simply here to say that maybe ancient lore, my culture or others, might have more validity to them and might be more relevant than we realize. And it might have a bearing on known fossils. Now, maybe there is some comparison there that we have habitually disregarded because it comes from a culture we consider to be less than ourselves. You have to remember that when Columbus met us and we were cordial and we brought them goods and fed them and were cordial and kind to them, his first comment of his freaking ass was, oh, these people make great servants. So you think that somebody being kind to you automatically makes them into a servitudal person? Meaning that you don't see them as your equal. Interesting. But that unfortunate attitude is still pervasive. I think it's culturally ingrained in some of us. You know, people hate you because of your skin tone. They hate you because of your word. People find more reasons to hate each other than to like each other. What's wrong with us? Why do we always focus on the negative? Are we not happy in our lives? Do we have nothing to look forward to? Do we feel that that's the only way we could make ourselves so better, is to make other people feel bad about themselves? What the hell? That's stupid. It's inappropriate. Yeah, that's true. My grandmother always, when she'd run across somebody like that was always dark and negative, she'd say, oh, they're possessed. They're being possessed by something. I don't think she was wrong. Put you on the list for your books. I'm in. Okay. Yeah, we've got a person who's going to be funding us to publish it. We're going to do a paperback, so it might be a limited run of 200 or 300 books. I don't know if we're going to do publishing online. It's probably going to be a physical book. But that might change because my laptop, if I can fix my software issue in it, because I've got a glitch in my keyboard of a writing program where I can just publish straight to online. Except I tried to put an offline writing program in because I wanted to do physical writing that was, to be published in book form, but not as a downloadable. And somehow those two programs don't like each other, and now I can't find all the keys on my board when I'm typing. So I can't find my apostrophe button. It's gotten reshunted to a different button. So currently, I either have to take one of my writing programs out, or I have to reprogram my keyboard so that all the keys are matching the emblems on them, or I have to sit there with a bunch of medical tape and write in where my keys have been relocated to on the board so I know where my apostrophes and commas and stuff are. Because it's all, the two programs don't like each other. And I don't know how to resolve that issue. Well, I'm glad I've got a chill vibe. I don't try to be an unhappy or goofy, out of sorts person. You gotta do something pretty harsh to me to get me all rattled. Because they're just, life's too short not to freaking have some fun. I mean, my mom, if she got bored, she'd pack a lunch, we'd go for a drive, we'd go find someplace entertaining, go have fun. Sometimes we'd up on top of a mountain and watch sunset, and then we'd drive home down a bumpy road in the middle of the night, hoping we wouldn't fall off a cliff. So Sometimes we'd end up out in the middle of nowhere by a river and we go swimming. You know, my mom was never dull, ever. If she got bored, she found a way to occupy both of us. And it was always something fun, or something new to see, or something new to do. Sometimes we'd just go off to a museum. It was always something fun. So I kind of that same way. I don't ever allow myself to get bored or to get stuck. It's just not worth it. Go do something. If you're laying around and you can't get motivated, go play. Go lay in the sun. Go picnic with your puppy dog. Go do something. Go for a walk. Do anything. Go get some air. Yeah, I got a lot of great memories with both my parents. My parents were just some of the most, in my mind, some of the most awesome people I ever knew. Because they always made time for me. They always had, uh, I never had, I was never put on the back burner. You know, if I went to my parents with a question, even if my parents were incredibly busy, if they couldn't help me right that moment, they would tell me, oh, go look in such and such a book on this page. That's where you're going to find that story. And they'd say, okay, well, when I'm done with what I'm doing, I'll come help you. Or we'll go do that together. You know, give me a minute, we'll go do that together. I was never ignored, you know, and I feel so blessed by that because I know there are lots of children that were put on the back burner, you know, that were never interacted with or taught anything. And that's horrible. It's not where our culture needs to be. So I'm glad I have those good memories to share because never a dull moment, ever, never a dull moment. Some of my adventures were just so awesome. You know, sometimes I wasn't told where I was going to be going. You're just going to go see something new today. That was always fun. I was introduced to new cryptids, so those were always fun times. Although, some of those locations I was never allowed to know the exact point of. Like a couple of them, I was blindfolded for over an hour and my mom would be driving before we ever got to where we were going to hike from. And she said the area is too valuable. You cannot afford it to be lost. And I said, well, how do you know how to find it? She says, well, I'm doing this so if you ever have to find it back, you can find your way in the dark. And that meant, what, Mom? She says, yeah, you're blind now. Remember, you're feeling your way there. So if you go later in life, don't close your eyes, just drive in the dark. You'll be able to find it again. She was right. I've been able to find a couple of those places that way. Still working on a couple of them. But how did she know that? Is that how her mom educated her about a couple of places? Made her earn her way back to that spot? Might be. Yeah, teamwork and dreamwork. Very, very true. Yeah, as it is, I'm so crummy with the modern tech, I'm going to have to go to somebody else just to help me freaking set my phone up. I am so non-tech savvy anymore, it's not even funny. Yeah, my parents did a really good job making sure that I always, no matter what circumstance I get dropped in, there's always some way for me to survive it, for me to understand how to digest what's going on. I'm glad for that, but it also makes me just a little different in my thinking. I guess that's okay though. We're all unique, right? That's probably why my dog's always such a punk. My animals are always spoiled to death because I always pay a lot of attention to them. And I remember even having one cat that my my flippin' neighbor poisoned one of my cats. And I took him to the vet. And he wasn't feeling good. And he got all cranky with the vet. The vet refused to doctor my cat. So I went in, I talked to my kitty, and I got him to relax. I got him to put his head in my hand. I'm there with the cat, completely prone on the table. And the doctor walks by, the vet walked by, and goes, "Is your cat okay?" I said, "Oh, he's just waiting for you to come in and examine him." He's like, "He's really calm right now." I said, "Yeah, it's because I told my cat you were here to help. And that if he was really quiet and laid patiently, you could examine him and figure out what's making him feel bad." That cat laid there. And the vet came in, did his thing, took a blood sample, found out the cat had been poisoned on fucking antifreeze. But, if you've got a good relationship with an animal, you can calm the animal. People don't understand that, though. Behaviors, spoiling them, getting them really close to you. The dogs, they're pack animals. You got to pay attention to them like they're a pack animal. Cats, they're a little more pride oriented, so you got to nudge them but not overbear them. And knowing those behaviors, you can do some really interesting things with animals, even when they are chronically ill or when they are in pain. You can get them to listen to you and to mind and to be patient. But they have to have a good relationship with you to do so. It's just paying attention to the things around you. It's what my grandmother always claimed. You just have to pay attention to what's around you. She meant that. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with me. I appreciate you all. I'll let you know this week if this channel is recoverable. And if not, then I'm probably going to take some time to rebuild the new channel. And I'll try to keep this channel up and working, and even in the broken state that it's in for a while, so I can make the new channel happen. I'm hoping, though, that this one can just be saved. But either way, no, that was years ago, sweetheart. I'm sorry, Super Tracker. Tinker, excuse me. That kitty passed away, 2000, if I remember right. I was able to keep him alive for another year, but it required insulin shots and hydration. So I had to become his caretaker for a year. And then his liver finally gave out. He was the coolest cat. It really sucked. But then, mean people, they don't care. They're just mean. Yeah, he was a really cool kitty. He had a really neat personality. He had a sense of humor. He's the only cat that I ever caught swimming in my bathtub. I had run myself bath one day, and I, just trickle running it, and I was filling the tub. And I went out to smoke a cigarette. I come back out, and my kitty was dog paddling around in my stinking tub. That cat could also paint. It started making pictures on the wall with dirt. So I started laying out, I taped up, packing paper, meat packing paper on the wall, and I leave out a tray of water and watercolors. I came home one day, he'd painted me flowers. He'd put paw prints. I still have that paper somewhere. He had painted yellow paw print flowers and orange paw print flowers and had put green swipes in. It totally blew me away. I had been at school all day, and when I came back, he'd painted a whole bunch of flowers on the wall. It was just an experiment to see if he'd do anything, and oh my God, he did. He painted. I didn't know it was even possible. And I'd gotten the idea because I'd done a research piece. One of my classes found out that elephants could be taught to paint. So I just experimented with my kitty to see if it was possible. Kitty used to paint, and it was. He could paint. It's so cool. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that cat was really amazing. He understood jokes, too. He'd play pranks on you. Such a punk. Anyway, enough of my emotions over a cat that's no longer here. At least I got to spend 10 years with him, if I remember right. 7 years? No, he only lived 7 years. Poor kitty. He was such a beautiful cat, too. He was all black. He had a little white spot on his chest. Just beautiful green eyes. Man, that cat was smart. He had reverse. The only cat I knew that would go into reverse. He'd catch something and scoot up underneath the table, get away from you with it. He could also do aerial barrel rolls, catch an item. The cat was really smart. He'd figure out, like, the dynamics of a building, and he'd use every surface to get where he wanted. He could even do a spiral run in a hallway up a set of stairs. God, that cat was smart. Really sucks that the neighbor poisoned him. And for no good reason. My cat was an indoor cat. He was trained to stay behind a 4-foot fence. There was another stray kitty in the area that looked a lot like my cat. And my neighbor accused my cat of beating up his cat. That's why he poisoned him. Though the neighbor's cat would come in and eat out of my cat's food bowl, and my cat would look at him. Now he just poisoned the wrong animal. Not that he cared. Yes, it is. Well, they are part of your lives. And, I still remember my pet mink from when I was a kid and all the cool things she did. She was neat. God, that animal got in a lot of trouble and had such a personality. See, we don't give our animals enough credit, I don't think. Well, anyway, guys, I have been rambling for the last 20 minutes, not focused on anything on the end of the cryptid line, so you guys have a great night. I gotta go do a couple hours of work, and I'll be back next Sunday unless somehow this channel becomes fully functional, this week, at which point I'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll go from here. We'll figure it out. I'll keep this channel up as long as I can, and if it goes down, like I said, I'll just start another channel. Hopefully under the same name, just add a 2 to it, see if that works. Hopefully it does. If I can't recover this one, then ground zero. Have a good night, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you all. Take care. Be good to each other, all right?